Hi there, Fluties. Welcome to my studio. My name is Cassie, aka the Tattooed Flute Teacher. If you don't know me already, this is my weekly vlog where I talk about what it's like to be a private lesson teacher, what's going on in the studio, how to handle things that are going on, just in general, if you're trying to be a private lesson teacher or if you just want to play the flute, right? So I talk a lot about mindfulness. I talk a lot about goals. I talk a lot about overcoming burnout and trouble and all that good stuff here. So today I want to talk about what it means to not hit your goals. So I am making this on the last day of July. And as some of you know, when I've talked about what's going on in my life and my flutings, I talk a lot about goal setting. Because I think that I know that goal setting is very important. It's very important to the process of growing in life and our playing and growing a business, just in general to the human condition. And this month, I set some pretty lofty goals, some of which I hit, some of which I fell a little short of, and some of which I just completely bombed. Didn't even come close. And I think that it's important to talk about the resilience that is sometimes required with those goals. For me, I am a person that I do get very down and out if I don't hit my goals. I do get a little bit bummed. I get the imposter syndrome. I get all of those things that, we try to tell ourselves not to feel, but I am human. I feel those things deeply. So, I did not hit my follower goal. I did not hit the number of students that I would have liked to have gained this month, or, the number of inquiries or the number of workshop signups. I didn't hit those things. And that's 100% okay, right? It's 100% okay to not hit the mark, because you know what happened? I got close, right? I worked in that direction. And so remembering that goals are not all about hitting them, right? What's the old saying? If you shoot for the stars, you'll even if you don't grab one, you'll land amongst them, And I think that that's an important thing to remember as we're setting our goals. So, set those goals high, set them somewhat out of reach. It's okay if you don't hit them. If you do hit them, that's incredible. That's amazing. I'm so proud of you, right? But if you're hitting them consistently, like if you're hitting your goals every single month, that is a good sign that you're not setting them quite high enough. And I'll tell you that my old employer was actually incredible for teaching us about that goal setting, because when we would set our monthly or yearly sales goals, they would not let us sandbag it, right? They look at what we did last year, they'd look at, our growth arc, right? And say, okay, so you were at this kind of percentage of growth last year, and this is kind of how your year went in terms of that growth, right? So how do you, even if you hit that goal from last year or not, how do you continue that trend, right? How do we continue to reach for a star, right? So I was pretty good at sussing out what would be a stretch, right? We don't want to set those goals too high, because if we set them too high, then it's just unattainable, right? We don't want to set it to be unattainable, but we also don't want to set it too easy, right? So I think that it's important to know and understand kind of that sweet spot, right? And this goes for building a business. This goes for, playing our flute, right? So there were other things that I set, other goals that I set for my actual playing that maybe some of them I hit, some of them I didn't. And it's okay, right? Because I still worked in that direction. I still worked towards something, as opposed to just, working without any sort of plan or without any sort of hope or without any sort of trajectory. Yes, this is my second giant cup of coffee in my Michigan Upper Peninsula mug. I love this thing. I love moose. They're so cool. It's so easy to want to wallow when you don't make the things happen. So I will be very frank. Moving from Indiana to California, some of you know that I moved from Indiana to California 6 months ago, and transitioning this business that was still somewhat in the fledgling growing phase in Indiana, cutting it off at the knees, right? And moving it, uprooting it, and moving it across the country is honestly one of the hardest and most emotionally taxing things that I have ever done. And I think that there's a big part of me that leaned into the toxic positivity. I think that there is a level of positivity that is necessary, right? We don't want to lean too far. We don't want to not acknowledge that things suck sometimes, right? To be perfectly frank, things suck sometimes, and that's okay. It's okay to lean into that a little bit and say, you know what, this sucks right now, right? I think that I leaned a little too heavily into bordering on toxic positivity, and this is going to be great. This is going to be awesome. So then once I touched down here, right, I was not anticipating to not immediately succeed. And I think that it has been very humbling because of the fact that I was immediately succeeding at building my business in Indiana, but I just had weird timing here, right? I moved here in February, right? I didn't really get on my feet and start really pushing my business until March or April. School was about to end, right? People aren't taking private lessons or aren't starting private lessons when school's about to end, right? I live in a different area culturally than I did in Indiana, so my strategies have to be different, right? And I think that I was not prepared for that, right? Like I was very prepared to do exactly what I did in Indiana, right? And to immediately touch down and for people to immediately go, yes, please, Cassie, I would love for you to teach me or to teach my kid or, oh, I found your website, immediately off the bat when I typed in San Diego flute teacher. And that's just not realistic, right? So I leaned in a little too heavily to this is going to be awesome, not this is going to be hard. And so therefore, when it was hard, I was a little bit hard on myself, right? I pendulumed right over into the imposter syndrome. Oh man, everybody's seeing right through me. Everybody sees that I'm not a great teacher, or I'm not the right fit for this, this community, or I am, I'm not working hard enough, or I'm not a good enough flute player, that kind of thing. I rolled right into that imposter syndrome, even though the reality is that the circumstances, the timing, the fact that I had not pivoted my strategies, that was all affecting whether or not I was getting new clients. And I think that is very telling, right? So, if I could, kind of take one thing and boil this whole video down to one thing, it's that being on either end of the spectrum here, the overly positive versus the, oh, this is terrible, is not where we want to be, right? In terms of being resilient, in terms of getting back up and dusting ourselves off when we don't hit our goals, right? Being on either side of that spectrum is not great, right? We need to find somewhere right in the middle where we can acknowledge that this sucks and this is not working, right? This is hard, right? Versus, I'm going to be fine. This is going to be fine. I need to work a little harder, or I need to do things differently in order for this to all be fine, right? So it's a balance between that, being positive, being optimistic, and acknowledging that things are hard. And I think that is the key when we're talking about this resilience, right? When we're talking about what happens when we don't hit our goals, right? So what happened this month that I didn't hit my goals? Did I set my goals too high? Was I too optimistic, right? With the amount of effort I was able to put in, right? Did I have other things going on? Yes, absolutely. I had other things happening in my life that contributed to the fact that I was not able to put as much time or effort as I needed to create what I needed, to drive the growth that I wanted to drive. Were there other factors, right? We're not blaming, right? We're not leaning into these excuses, but we're also not going, oh, it'll be fine. I'll just keep moving, right? We're also taking some time to reflect and say, what happened, right? Why is this? Why did I not hit my goal? What happened here? And how can I take that information and pivot, right? And still be positive and still be optimistic and still move forward. So I think that the big thing is just finding this balance between, everything's going to be fine. I just need to keep pushing forward and you just need to keep doing the same thing, right? Versus, man, this is rough. What's going on? And so I think that the big thing with this move from from Indiana to California, I think that the big thing is that it has been a learning experience. And I think as long as we're learning every step of the way, as long as we are learning and continuing to grow, we're going to be fine, right? Everything is going to be fine as long as we continue learning, we continue to grow, we continue to acknowledge the fact that sometimes things suck, right? But how can we take that and pivot and move forward? Same goes for everything in life, right? Same goes for, working on your repertoire, right? Are you working on a concerto and things just aren't going the way that you want it to go, right? You are not making progress. You are at a plateau. So what do, right? We mindfully examine what is going on and we decide how we're going to pivot. So is it that we weren't able to spend enough time, right? Were we not able to spend enough practice hours? Or is it that we're not doing enough chunking or interleaved practice, or, we're not practicing efficiently, right? We're working on the parts that are really good, but we're not working on the parts that are really bad, right? It's those type of things that we need to look inward, right? And be very realistic and very mindful and know what's going on in our playing so that we can go, okay, I didn't hit my goals last month, so I need to keep moving forward. How do I move forward, right? How do I take this information that's not so positive, flip it, and push forward in a positive way? So that's the message for this week's vlog, is that, we can take setbacks and move forward, right? We have to acknowledge that they're a setback first, though, right? We have to acknowledge that something happened, right? That said, set your goals high. Don't expect to meet your goals every single time, right? Set your goals high enough that you could possibly reach them, right? But you might not if things don't go the way that you planned. So set those goals high, because even if you don't reach your goals, you'll get somewhere, right? You will move forward. So I am so proud of you for continuing to show up and for continuing to do the things and to be here and to work hard and to try to be mindful in your practice, because that's what's going to be the game changer in the long run, right? Is this way of being introspective and being mindful. So I'm very proud of you. Thank you so much for being here and sharing in this somewhat stream of consciousness ramble about what happened, and why I didn't hit my goals this month and what I'm going to do next, right? So next thing, I set my goals honestly a little bit higher for August, because I know that I'm going to be able to spend more time. I know that I'm going to be able to do more things. And I know that I have this determination in me to get where I want to go. So I set my goals high for August. This month, we've got a studio class where I'm going to talk about exactly this. I'm so excited. We're going to talk about how to set goals and what to do and, the resilience factor and how to get past things when we don't hit our goals. Because I think that that's something that my studio could benefit from, right? So we're going to do a studio class on that. And that's going to be kind of the big theme for this month is resilience, right? We're going back into the school year. We might get pushed down a couple of times in the very beginning of the school year as we get used to going back to school and, or if you're a parent, sending your kid back to school. So we're going to talk about resilience. We're going to talk about, what to do and how to handle it. So I'm so proud of you. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next week.